Zuko was meditating to the weak light of pre-dawn when Paco moved out of his room. It was strange to wake before the sun, but it rose so late in the northern winter he had been rested before the sun completely arose. Paco seemed surprised to see him up, but when someone came to the door with a pot, he reluctantly invited the young firebender to share breakfast. Zuko accepted, joining the elder at the low table to accept a savory porridge with preserved fish. It was surprisingly tasty, and the warmth of the porridge was welcomed in the cold morning. My more advanced classes meet in the early afternoon, the man began as they ate, breaking the silence that had just started to range away from awkward and to comfortable. The training grounds that we use are in the glacier overlooking the healing tent. Zuko blinked at the abrupt info dump before remembering their conversation the night before, and what he had agreed to. The teen scowled, but vowed, "I'll be there." The waterbending master nodded. "I'm off to begin the Avatar's training. I told the boy to meet me at dawn, and would like to run through some katas before he arrives." Zuko cocked his head, curious. Firebending training always starts at dawn. It's interesting that waterbenders does as well. I was always told that waterbending power rose with the moon. Paku hesitated for a moment, as though reluctant to give away bending information to a potential enemy, before forcing himself to answer. "You are told correctly. However, what the Avatar needs right now is not power, it is control. I will use that time that his power is at its least to train his control to be its greatest." A smirk flitted across the old man's face. "Besides, I suspect the boy lacks discipline. I want to make sure that he has the ability to do what is asked, even when it's something he does not wish to do." Zuko bowed, hands making the symbol of the flame. "You're a wise master, Sifu Paku," he said. Regardless of his nation, it was easy to see that Paku was a good master. The man eyed him shrewdly, as though trying to determine whether or not the boy's compliment was genuine. Eventually, he seemed to come to the conclusion that it was, and his severe expression relaxed a bit. "The Northern Water Tribe boasts the best healers in any nation. I recommend you pay them a visit. They may be able to help with your firebending. At the very least, they should be able to get a read on your chi." Zuko perked, rising to his feet. "Thank you," he said, pulling his borrowed coat on over his head and following the elder bender out of the simple hut. It wasn't much action outside yet, though most homes had the glowing light of candles or hearths flickering in the windows. Likely people wouldn't start to come outside until the sun was fully up, and were starting the day with indoor chores. The teen followed the man's directions to the healing hut, silently very glad that he went the opposite direction. He wanted to be well out of the way when Katara was denied training. It wasn't until he walked into a room to see a young girl holding a ball of glowing water to a child's skinned knee, and an elder woman monitoring closely, that he remembered Paku's decree that female benders were to be the healers, which meant Katara would be sent this way. Great. The room went stiff when he entered. All the eyes locked onto him with grim suspicion. The teen felt his shoulders rise to his ears as the stares brought tension. His hands folded into fists, and though he didn't quite breathe fire, the steam caused by his breath was much more noticeable than created by the others. He tried to force himself to calm down, but it was hard. He hated being stared at. Finally, one person left the fearful huddle, an elderly woman with her hair pulled back into a bun at the base of her head. "Can I help you, young man?" Paku said that I should come here because I've been having some problems with my chi." He forced the words through clenched teeth, forcing himself to look at the woman rather than the still frayed group eyeing him. He hated being watched like he was a threat. No, not a threat. An active danger. They watched him like a scorpion viper, likely to strike for the sin of being too near. He wanted to scream at them, shout that he didn't want to hurt anyone, but he knew it would only make matters worse. He tried to force a smile, to look unthreatening, but he didn't know how. His childhood was show no weakness, and his adolescence was always be ready to fight. He was dangerous. He was a threat. But not to these people. He just didn't know how to show it. "Well," the woman said, and name-dropping Paku seemed to have helped as she relaxed. "I'm afraid you came into the wrong room. This is our training room. The other door leads to our general clinic." Zuko flushed. Oh. He gave a pair of quick bows, first to the woman, to the cluster of others, all of whom were young. Other than the mother of the child, most of them could still be considered children. I apologize for the intrusion. Something of his trying not to be seen threatening must have worked, because for some reason one of the little girls giggled at that, and suddenly a group of terrified children turned into a gaggle of whispers behind gloves and high-pitched giggles. Worse. This was worse. The old woman, however, was smiling. My name is Yagota. I am the senior healer, and I am in charge of training the novice. Come, I will take you to someone who can help. Thank you, he said awkwardly and bowed again, but this just got off another round of giggles which made him blush even harder. The woman winked and led him outside to another entrance of the large, lavish hut, moving into a room stuffed by young and middle-aged women chatting. A few beds were in the room, but the only one occupied was a man whose leg was suspended in an elaborate contraption. He was still asleep. The woman stopped chatting and stood as someone close to attention as Yagota entered, but other than a kindly smile and a nod, she ignored the majority of them, and marched straight to a woman approximately 10 years his senior, with a hairstyle with particularly elaborate hair loopies. Amka, she greeted. Healer Yagota, did you bring me a patient? She asked, her eyes lingering on the scar marring Zuko's face. Yes, our guest here, Zuko. Zuko says that he's having some problems with his chi. You've always been the most talented with that. I thought you would like to take a look. A specific sheen came to the woman's eyes at the mention of chi. Zuko at first would have attributed it to the fact she wouldn't have to break the news that would likely do nothing for a year-old scar. Katara had tried, but the wound was too old. But she seemed especially eager. I get to look at a firebender's chi? She said eagerly. Yagota smiled. You may, but remember this is for healing, not for research. And then she just left. She left Zuko with this stranger. Not that she wasn't a stranger, not that it made much sense to trust one random strange waterbender more than another. This was fine. This would have to be fine. The woman smiled at him, still looking too eager for his preference, but the boy obeyed when she directed him to lay in one of the blankets. He watched as her hands enveloped in glowing blue water, and the sight was so familiar, courtesy of Katara, that he felt something at ease. So, he began awkwardly as the woman began what felt like an extremely slow scan. Research? Oh, it's nothing malicious, sorry. I'm sure that conversation was odd from your point of view. Most of the healers have certain elements of healing that they study more than others. Different specialties, I guess. I've always loved studying chi paths. I'm working on a thesis about how chi paths of benders and non-benders, the differences and similarities, and what implications that has for healing. That sounds pretty interesting, actually. Thanks. I like to think so. We don't have a lot of text from before the war, but one I found says that firebenders use their chi to make fire. Is that true? Zuko frowned, considering what he should say. Now he knew how Pakku had felt earlier. That's kinda simplistic, but technically, I guess. The chi within our body helps to be a conduit for our inner fire. I wouldn't say that the chi itself makes a fire, but it's close enough that fundamentally, I guess you could say that. He wasn't sure if he should say that healing his chi would help his bending grow stronger, and he hoped that she would be too distracted to make the connection she was obviously intelligent enough to make. Fascinating. Seems pretty unique to firebenders, then. Her voice had taken on a strange, educational tone, and Zuko was pretty sure she was mentally filing the information into her thesis. It was probably this, the almost impersonal way she spoke about him, that made him say what he said next. Well, not really. Chi is important for all bendings. That's why chi blockers are so vital. The what? They spoke throughout the medical scan, and gradually the others in the medical tent seemed to thaw to him as well. One woman went as far as to ruffle his hair and say, "Now, honey, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Amka could talk about thesis for a week straight and only just get done talking about the introduction." In retaliation, Amka used one hand to send a ball of snow down the woman's coat, making her shriek. When the woman moved as though in revenge, Amka just pointed her still glowing hand pointedly as though daring the other woman to move against her while she was working on a patient. The stranger's glare promised retaliation when possible. If anything, the exchange just made the scan even longer, and Zuko had no clue what was going on. The palace medical rooms had been a familiar haunt in his childhood. Firebending was dangerous, and he had been pushed hard. Accidents and punishments for failure, and a particular competent sibling had sent him to the sterile clinic room for stern-frowned doctors employed by the palace. They were stern, working quickly and professionally, and saying not a word more than the loose expectation a bedside manner dictated. He liked these healers better. Finally, after what felt like forever, Amka lowered her hand and let the water slip into a pool in the center of the room. Okay, so your chi is definitely weak. I almost say sick, or recovering from being sick, but that's not quite right either. Starved, Zuko said softly. It's like my chi was starved. The woman watched him, concern blossoming in her previously studious eyes, but after a moment she simply nodded. That's the best comparison, I guess. Sure, and honestly, starvation isn't something that water healing can resolve. You need food, or whatever the fire chi equivalent is. She waited expectantly, but Zuko said nothing. After a moment, she said, Okay, fair enough, but I'm going to assume you know what it is and just don't want to tell me? Yeah. Do you know how to get it? Yes. Fine, if that changes, as your healer I'm ordering you to let me know. The part of Zuko that still remembered being a prince rattled at that, as some nobody presuming that they could give him orders. The rest of Zuko similarly told that part to shut up. I will. Okay now, well we can heal starvation with bending, so we can usually help mitigate some of the effects. We can help some of the damage that starvation does to the organs and muscles, etc. So there are elements to your chi that I think I can improve. It won't get you all the way there, but it should help quite a bit. Zuko inhaled sharply. Please, whatever you can do. The woman bit her lip. Before I mess with anything, I want to look at the scroll with the firebending chi map. And I want to look at some healthy bender chi to make sure I'm confident that what I'm doing will help. Come back at the same time tomorrow and we can start. Zuko's lips twitched, urging him to scream and shout and demand that she heal him now. He hated spending 1 second weaker than he had to, especially here, where it had already been proven that he had more enemies than friends. Here where he had once again been forced to fight and betray his nation for the privilege of being allowed to live. He didn't, though. Instead, he simply rolled to his feet and bowed deeply. Thank you for your hard work, he forced himself to say, and mean it. The woman in the room cooed at him, and that was somehow worse than the earlier giggling, so he quickly made his way out of the hut. It was still hours before mid-afternoon, and he wasn't exactly sure what to do, which would have worried him if he hadn't already tripped directly into Sokka as he left the hut. Whoa! Sokka exclaimed, cartwheeling his arms in an attempt to keep upright as the two teens careened into one another. Zuko regained his balance much more smoothly. Sokka wasn't jealous. The elder teen's face was creased in concern almost immediately. Why are you going to the healing hut? Did you get hurt? What happened? Sokka shook his head rapidly. He had not known that he was inviting another mother saber-toothed moose lion into the team when he found the scowly boy chained to a wall. But Zuko's protective instincts were as big as his sense of self-preservation was small. That, combined with the inability, yes, inability, not unwillingness, to give up was a combination that was as dangerous for Zuko as it was for anyone stupid enough to get in his way. I'm fine. The healing hut just happens to be next to the armory. I was going to see if I could convince them to donate some weapons to the Avatar's team. He grinned, and was glad to see a quirk of Zuko's lips in response. Then he caught up to what the other teen had said. Wait, what about you? Are you okay? Why are you at the healing hut? Did the waterbenders yesterday hurt you that badly? I swear I'll... Master Paku thought they might be able to help my chi. Zuko interrupted the threat Sokka had no clue how to finish. Sokka blinked blankly at the explanation. Zuko sighed. My bending? He is quieter. Oh, right. Did it help? I don't know. She says she wants to do some research first. I hope so. You'll get there, buddy, Sokka insisted, cheerfully, turning toward the armory and smithy. The firebender moves as though to follow the water tribe teen. Hoping for an extra boomerang? Nah, Dad always said that was more of a southern tribe thing, but now that you've been teaching me sword fighting, I figured I need something other than my machete club. More specifically, all the sword training that Zuko had been subjecting him to since the Great Divide wouldn't do him much good if he did not have a sword. Using Zuko was fine for practice, but didn't help much when Zuko needed his own weapon in any situation, where swords were deemed necessary. The Water Tribe has swords? Sokka made a so-so gesture as he pulled back the insulating hide doorway of the hut. Not really. We have more spears than anything, because that's what works best for hunting. But there are some short spears that are two-sided blades that I think would function as a sword. I want to see. Zuko nodded idly, distracted the instant they entered the hut by row upon row of tall spears with a myriad of tips of metal, bone, and ivory. Sokka smiled around the room, something settled within him with the familiar sight of well-maintained, handcrafted weapons, each one slightly varied from the next to show the craftsman's personality. He eyed the long spear for a moment, and while he had been decent enough, he never excelled at it, not as he had with his sword under Zuko's tutelage. He moved on to the shorter spears on the table, idly talking to a man working on weapons on their own as he tested the weight and feel. He chatted comfortably with the men, both to discuss weapons and to distract them from the distrustful eyeing of the firebender, being careful not to touch. After a while, the conversation turned to what exactly he was looking for, and when he confessed that he had recently been trying out sword fighting, the men had shared a glance. "You'll have to ask Kamak, but we might," one of them started, rummaging through a box of what appeared to be subpar weapons and emerging with a above-par sword. It was a good thing the floor was already made of ice, because Sokka was drooling. It was gorgeous. Longer and straighter than Zuko's, the blade had the unique silver white of his tribe's weapons, its handle carved from sturdy, woolly rhinoceros femur and wrapped in a leather-dyed Water Tribe blue. The guard was stark white and carved in the jaggedly flow way that was evocative of every decorative weapon Zuko admired with wide eyes growing up. The Water Tribe swordsman took the grip when it was offered, and nothing felt more like it belonged in his hands. "Where did you get this?" Zuko asked, almost sounding accusatory as he eyed the weapon. "Kamak made it," one of the men said stiffly, unhappy to be speaking to the firebender at all. "He's our most masterful craftsman. One of Master Pakku's Pai Sho friends sent the design. Something about every nation needing swords or something. I don't know." "Master Pindol? This looks like his work," Zuko said in wonder, eyes shining as he clearly appreciated the beauty of the blade as much as Sokka. The men shrugged. "I don't know. Doubt it. Sounds like an awful Fire Nation name. I doubt Master Pakku had anything to do with someone like that." The man said Fire Nation like it was the most obscene swear, and Sokka bristled in Zuko's defense. The elder teen snarled, stepping forward with his hands folded into fists. The man immediately bent, grabbing a finished spear and moving into an aggressive position. Whoa. Let's maybe settle down a bit," Sokka intervened, stepping between the two. It's a very long, very tense moment. Nobody moved, but then the other Water Tribe men put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "He's right. No need to do this in the armory. We can settle this later." "Fine," Zuko spat. "Fine," the man repeated, the tone nearly identical. "But this afternoon, I'm sending you to ice so fast you won't remember how to stand for a week." Zuko snorted. "I doubt it." Then he stalked out of the room, smoke pouring from his nostrils and baby flames pooling in his clenched fist. Sokka hurriedly handed back the incredible blade, mentally promising to find Kamak and come back for his baby as soon as possible, before running after his friend. What was happening this afternoon?